Hey there, this is Kamal, and in this video we'll be understanding the folder structure of a Laravel project. So let's get this started. Alright, so in the previous video we've seen what Laravel is and how to set it up inside our own Windows system. So let's actually continue on from there. So for that, let's open our terminal once again. So we are right now inside the Visual Studio Code. So let's go to the terminal instance. In here, let's type in PHP Artisan serve. So what we're typing in right now is PHP, which is the language that we're using right now, space Artisan. So Artisan is a command line interface which is provided by Laravel for us to have some tools which are available and easy for us to use. So in that, serve is one thing which we can use. It is a script to start our server. So once I type in PHP Artisan serve and if I click on enter, that's going to deploy our application onto a dummy local host server. So right now it's deployed and it's being hosted at the port 8000. So let's open the browser and let's go to localhost 8000. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the default Laravel page. So this is a page that is visible to us when we create a new Laravel project. So now let's understand the folder structure. Okay, so for now, let's minimize the terminal instance. So I'll close it off. Now on the left hand side menu, we have all the files present inside our structure. You don't need to know all the files which are present here. You just need to know few files which are important for us to get started with the Laravel. So the main one that you need to know is composer.json. So this composer.json is a file in which all of our packages which are being installed are connected and are listed out. So as you can see here, we have the name of our project, description, keywords, and license. Apart from that, we also have require, which is including all the packages which are being used by Laravel right now. So these are the packages which are being used and these are the current versions. You can scroll down and you can see all the available options that you have here. But for now, you just need to know that all of your Composer packages are being listed out here. If you want to add a new package into this, you can open your terminal instance and let's create a new one. Now inside of this, you can type in composer install, then give the name of the package which you want to link to Laravel. Once you do that, that will be installed and that will be listed out here inside this file. Apart from that, you can also update all the available packages. For that, you can type in composer update. So that is the basic commands that you need to know for composer, which is not specific for Laravel, but composer. Okay. Now let's close this off. So that is one file. Apart from that, you also have a .env file. So the .env file, also known as the environment file, is a file in which we keep all of our secret information. And by that, I mean, let's say we want to connect to a database. We don't generally want to hardcode our username and password inside our PHP file directly. Instead, we keep a .env file. So this .env file contains all of our passwords, usernames, and everything that we are using inside our application. It also contains our API keys if there are any available right now. So in this case, let's say we want to connect to the MySQL database. As you can see, we have a few lines representing the connection with the MySQL database. As you can see, we are providing the database name, username, and password. So this username and password is sensitive information. So it's always best practice to keep all of your sensitive information inside your .env file. Apart from your database and all, you can also connect to Amazon Web Services. So you also have, the S3 bucket and all. Apart from that, you can connect to a mailer system like MailChimp or whatever it is, or SendGrid or whichever mail client that you're using right now. Apart from that, you also have other things that you can look through. But for now, let's leave it here. And apart from this main configuration, you also have your name of the application, your app key, and you also have the base URL of your website. So you can, update this to something else. Let's say I want to update this to packetcode. So you can change that if you want, or you can just leave it as it is. That won't affect it, but this will be useful when you're trying to use the environment variables. Okay, so these are the variables that are being defined here, right? So you can use this app_URL, which is a variable anywhere inside your project. So when we use that, that is when this will come into the picture. So let's leave this for now and we'll come back to this database connection when we're trying to create a database inside our local MySQL. Apart from the environment file, you also need to understand a few things or a few concepts inside of Laravel. And the first thing is that Laravel follows the MVC Design Pattern. So MVC stands for Model View Controller. So it's a design pattern wherein we segregate all of our code into a specific format so that anybody in the world can access that and be able to easily understand what structure we are following and where the files are present inside our folder structure. So I'll not be going too deep into the MVC architecture. If you want, you can go and look through some YouTube videos wherein they define and go more in depth into this architecture. But for now, I'll just give you a rundown version of what it is and let's get started from there. Okay. So as I've said, the MVC stands for Model View Controller. So what it means is that we generally keep all of our database files, like the schemas of our models or the schemas of our database, inside the model folder, okay, under the model folder. And we keep all of our front-end files, like the HTML files which are visible to the user, in the views folder. Okay, so model is for database schemas. Views is for all of our front-end visible files, like the HTML files which are visible to the user. And the C, which stands for controller, contains all of our files wherein we write our logic. Okay, so the controller is the brain of this whole architecture. So that is where all of our logic comes from. So in order to understand that, let's actually go and dive into the structure itself and let's see it from there. So if you want to, let's say, go with the view for now. Okay, so let's understand the view part of it. So now if you go to the resources folder, inside the resources folder, you have a folder called as views. And inside of that, we have one file called as welcome.blade.php. So this file is using the Blade templating engine. So if you don't know what a templating engine is, essentially it is like a tool which gives us some more functionality from a normal PHP file. So right now, if you want to create a new file instead of a Laravel application, then you have to append it with .blade. So like home.blade.php or signup.blade.php. That is how you name it out. So now inside of this file, the main reason why we're using Blade is because let's say you want to write an if condition. If you want to generally do that in PHP, it is a bit of a tedious task. We have to figure out how to do it through all the opening and closing brackets of the PHP tags. But Blade, the templating engine, makes it easy for us to write an if condition. As you can see, there is an if condition here for the login logic. Right? Similar to that, you also have some other functionality which is given to us by default by Blade, which makes it easy for us to write the whole project code. And also, this file that you're seeing right now is a main file that is being shown for us on the screen. Okay, like let's say if I remove this whole thing and if I just type in hi, if I save that and go to the browser and refresh, and you'll see that hi is present inside our browser, right? So this file is being rendered onto the screen. So where is the logic coming from? That is what we need to understand here. So before understanding the whole MVC architecture, you also need to understand one more thing, which is called as routing. Okay, so what this routing means is that if you go to the browser and if you go to the URL, generally what we type is that we generally type in /index.html, right? So this index.html represents our index page. If you want to go to some other page, you type as, let's say, about.html, which represents our about.html page. Similarly, let's say you don't want to directly type the .html. Instead, you can type in like, let's say, index or about. When we type something out like after the slash, it is representing something, right? So this about should reference to an about page, and that index should reference to an index page. So we want to have a kind of a mapping wherein whatever you type after the slash should map to something inside our application. Like in this case, I want the /about to go to my about page. Similarly, /login to go to my login page, right? In order to set that up, we use what is known as a routing. So in order to understand this routing mechanism, let's actually directly go to the file wherein the logic is written, right? So in this case, if you go to routes, so there is a folder called as routes. Inside that, there are a few files which you don't need to worry about right now. But the main file that you need to worry about is web.php. This is where the whole logic flow starts inside of a Laravel application. As you can see here, there is some syntax present here, right? So let's understand this. So what we're doing is that we're creating a route with the get context. So by now you should know some concepts like get, post, put, patch and delete, which are like the REST API concepts. So I'm assuming that you already know those concepts. If not, it's better you just brush up on those, like the get, post, put, patch and delete commands, which are like the basic operations of a HTTP request. Okay, so just go through YouTube and just understand those 4 or 5 things. Once you're done with that, you can just carry on from here. So we are creating a GET request. Okay, so what it means is that whenever the URL has just slash inside of it, it should return a view. This view is referencing to our views folder. Inside that, it should reference to the welcome page. So that means whenever somebody just types in slash, it should open the welcome page, that is welcome.blade.php that we have here. Now let's say I want to change it to about. Okay, if I change it to about and if I save that, now if I go to the browser and if I just click on enter, you'll see that you have 404 not found page because there is no route mapping to slash. Right now we only have one route, which is about, that is /about. when you type in /about, it is going to open the welcome page which has hi inside of it, right? So in this way, you can define routes to each and every page that you have inside of your Laravel application, and that is going to open that particular page when you go to that particular route. So in this way, you define the routing mechanism. So this is all well and good, but as I've said, the control and the logic should always be present inside our controller file, right? So logic should not be present inside our route. So what we do is that instead of directly typing it out like this, we generally reference to a controller present inside our application. Okay, so in order to first reference to that, we need to first create a controller and also need to understand where the controller is present inside of our application. So if you go back to the folder structure once again, and if you expand the app folder, inside of that you have two things. One is HTTP, the second one is models. So this models is wherein you define the schemas, right? So I've said that models is a folder in which you define the schemas. Like let's say there is a user schema which is being defined right now, and this defines what fields are present inside of our database, and also it also defines what things we can do with that particular schema. Okay, so it's not exactly referencing that schema, like we'll be creating something else where the schema is being defined, but in this models we'll be defining what we can do with that. Okay, so it's not just a schema, we also define some logic and some properties which are defined for that particular model. So in this case, we have a user model which is referencing a particular user. So user should have name, email and password. So these are the columns which can be fillable by the end user, and also some other things like password, remember token. Like these are things which are given to us by default. So we'll understand what these are, and we'll also create our own models, but not now. Okay, so let's skip this for now. But essentially, the models is a place wherein you define a user model or a customer model or a post model. That is where you define the logic which we can do on that particular table. So now let's close this off and let's go to the HTTP. Okay, so let's close off the models and let's go to HTTP. So inside of the HTTP, you have the controllers folder. That is where our controllers are being defined. So if you open the controller.php, this is the base controller which is defined to us by default. So we'll not be touching this. Instead, we'll be creating our own controllers. Okay. So there are multiple ways in which you can create a controller. Like you can just click on this folder, click on the plus icon and create a new file. Like let's say I want to create a post controller. I can type it as post controller.php. That is good. Okay, that can be done. But the thing is that you have to again, initiate all the things which are required. And also you need to type out some basic functions. Okay, like for every controller, there are some functions which are given to us by default. So you have to type it out manually. So instead of not having to do that, what we can do is that we can use that command line tool which I had mentioned previously. That is the Artisan. Okay, so let's open the terminal instance, and in here let's type in php artisan --help. If you type that out, it's going to give you all the things that you can do with this Artisan command. Okay, so these are the things that you can do. So for now, let me list out all the commands which are present inside our Artisan. So php artisan list, I think that is a command. So these are all the commands which you can actually execute through Artisan. Okay, so for now what we want to do is that we want to just focus on one command, which is make. So this make has multiple sub commands. Like let's say I want to create a controller, so I have to use the make command and I have to invoke the controller. Where is that? Yeah, I have to do this. So let's type that out. So what I'll do is that I'll clear it out. I'll type in php artisan make, then give a colon, and I want to create a controller. Okay, if I do that, that's gonna create, oh yeah, I forgot the name, so I have to type in the name of the controller, post controller. So this particular Artisan already knows where that controller has to be created, and it will create it there. So if I go to the controllers once again, you'll see that the post controller is created again. If I open that out, you'll see that it has some basic structure. Okay, so all the predefined things which are required have been imported, and you also have the class created for us. This is good, but I don't want this. Instead, I want to have some basic commands. Like let's say I want to create a controller for a blog. So what do we have in a controller for a blog? We have functions which define how to create a post, edit a post, update a post, delete a post, show all the posts like listed out, or show individual posts, or all these functions, right? So it's good that you can type it out manually, but there is another shortcut way in which we can actually define all the predefined function at the same time. Okay, like we can just generate it out. So for that, what we'll be doing is that I'll just delete the controller once again. So I'll just delete it out. And this time, in order to create that particular template, we have to create the controller as well as the model at the same time. Or you can first create the model then use a model to create the controller. I'll explain what that is. So let's open the terminal once again. Let's clear the screen out. Let's type in PHP Artisan make controller. Okay, then you have to give the controller name. That's well and good. Now what I'll be doing is that I'll be creating a model as well, right? So I'll be typing in -m, give a space, and let's say I want to create a post model. Okay, like I want to create a post controller, right? So I want to create a post model. So I'll type that out, and if I click on enter, it's going to ask whether you want to generate the model. I want to say yes. Now the model has been created and the controller also has been created. If I open the models thing, you can see that there is a post model. If I expand that, you'll see that we have the basic, structure of a model. Now, if I go to the controllers as well, you'll see you have the post controller, right? And inside of this, apart from the basic structure, you also have some functions: index, create, store, show, edit, update, and destroy. So these are the functions which are given to us by default, which we can use to actually create and control our application, right? So this is where we'll be writing our logic. So now let's say I want to, use this controller and, show our welcome page. Okay. So before we had the welcome page directly shown here. Now I don't want to do that. Instead, I want to call the controller, and in the index, function, I'll be writing out the logic to render or view the welcome page to the user. So let's go back, and in here, let's type in post controller. Now inside the post controller, I want to go to the class. Okay. So I have to give it as :class, the space, and in here I have to give out the function that I want to call. In this case, I want to call the index function, right? I'll save that out. And also when you type it out as post controller, it has to be imported as well. I think VS Code does it automatically, but if it's not there, then you have to use this particular line to import the controller as well, because the controller is present inside the app HTTP controllers. Okay, so it has to be imported before you can use it. Now let's go back to the post controller, and in here let's type it out. Okay, so what I'll be doing is that I'll be returning a statement, and what I'll be returning is essentially the view. Okay, so before here in this web.php, we had a function in that we had the view, right? That is what was being written. Now instead of doing that, I'll be returning a class, right? In that class, I'll be calling the index function. Inside this, I'll be returning that logic. Okay, so I'll just type it out here. Now I'll just type in welcome. If I save this and if I go back to the browser, if I refresh, okay, I think we need to change the route. Yep, it is at /. Let's say I'll type it as hi. Let's just do it for testing purposes. If I go back, if I type it out, let's say as hi, you'll see that hi is being printed. That is because we're going to the welcome blade, right? So the logic starts and goes like this. So it first comes to the web.php wherein the routing is being defined. It checks what route we are using based on what we had entered here. Then it goes to that controller. Okay, so it goes to the controller and it calls the function which is being called here. So it goes to the index function. Inside that, the logic that we defined is to return a view, which is the welcome page, right? So the welcome.blade.php is being written. Let's say I want to create a new view. So I can do that through terminal as well, but for now I'll just do it from here. So I'll give it as, let's say, hello.blade.php. Inside this, I'll just type it out as, let's say, some basic boilerplate template. And the body section, let's type it out as, let's say, hi, this is Kamal. Let's save that, and now instead of rendering the welcome page, let's render the hello page. Let's save that. Let's go back, and if I refresh now, you'll see that hi, this is Kamal is being printed. So in this way, you can define the route, and also you can define the controller, and also you can define the model, right? So that is the MVC architecture, like the basic version of the MVC architecture, so to say. That is how the logic is being flown inside our application. So whenever you request a new thing inside our page, it goes through this particular flow. So it starts with the route, goes to the controller, then goes to the view. There's also one more concept called as middleware, which acts as a bridge between our routing and our controller, but we'll not be going into that because that is an advanced concept and it is out of the scope of this particular series. So apart from this, there are also a few other folders which you need to know. The first one on that is the database folder. So in that you have the migrations, factories, and seeders. So the one you need to concentrate on is the migrations. The migration is, the place where you actually define the schema of what the table should be. So if you execute this particular file, a table will be created automatically inside our database. We don't need to manually create that. Okay, so we can write that script here. So the schema is being outputted here. This is also linked to the model, so I'll get into that when we come to the database section. So let's close it off for now. Apart from that, you also have access to your public folder. That is where you keep all of your files like CSS, JS, and any scripts which are being used, or any images which are being used, which have to be visible to the front end. Okay, so like let's say you have some images which have to be shown to the user, and the user should also be able to access it, then that is kept here. So if you want those files to not be accessible to the user and not be accessible by anybody, then you have to place it inside your storage folder. So we'll not be going into the storage folder because that is out of the scope of this particular series, but we'll be understanding how we can link to the public folder and rendering out all the images and linking to the CSS and JS files. So these are all the things which you need to know when you're getting started with creating a new Laravel application. So in the upcoming videos, we'll be actually seeing how we can create a blog application inside our Laravel project. And also in the next video, I'll be explaining how we can divide this whole thing into multiple chunks, and we can have a layout which we can reuse. Like you don't want every HTML page to contain the header and the footer, right? So you don't want that to happen. So we'll be creating a layout which is like the base layout, and on top of that, we'll be writing all of our code. Okay, so I'll explain what that is in the next video. So stay tuned for that. And as always, all the links for this particular video will be available in the description down below. And you'll also have access to the code repository, which is available on GitHub as well. And the link for that is provided in the description down below. You can go there and check that out. Let me know what you think about this particular video in the comment section down below. And if you're having any doubts, let me know that as well. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you have liked what you have seen till now. If you did, then please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.